Hi, my name is Campbell. I am a freelance editor and indie author. My first book, a collection of poetry called The Ones, comes out next month, September 26th, available on all platforms books are sold. And today I want to talk about the writing and publishing timeline for The Ones, since I have been published in the past, traditionally and more self-published, but this is the first actual, I know poetry is not fiction, but this is the first non-fiction piece I have published, entirely with self-publishing. And so my last poetry was published in 2013, and it was just part of a poetry anthology put together by the 2010 Texas Poet Laureate Carla K. Morton. It's called Hometown, Texas, and it was published by TCU Press. So I just want to go into the writing and publishing timeline and kind of give you guys an idea of how long it took from start to finish. So first things first, I took a bit of a writing hiatus, from 2016 to 2022. I just did not write. It was about 6.5 years, and in late 2022, I was like, you know what, we just got to get back into it. So November is when I started writing poetry again. And I wrote the majority of The Ones between November and December of 2022. And I had some stragglers between January and February, but I would say probably 80 pages of the 126 that are here were written in those 2 months, and the remaining 45 pages were over the following 2 months. So coming into January and February, that's when I started working out the concepts. I came up with the idea of The Ones in the beginning of 2023. And it was the idea of the poetry I was writing was very cathartic. It was helping me with past relationships, loss of family in the previous few years, as well as loss of friends and gaining friends, and then realizing who has stayed through all of it. And so that's where the concept came up for the 3 dividers of the book, which are the ones I left, the ones who left, and the ones who stayed. And so that concept came around in February, and that's when I decided to actually research covers for poetry. I don't have the other books with me, but I've shown them in all my other videos. But I really wanted something minimalistic. There was a poem called Garden, which is the inspiration for the ivy that's going across it and onto the spine, and there's a bit of ivy on the back as well. And that was, I really wanted something natural, something directly connected to nature, and so that's where that idea came from. And so this final cover did not come about in February, but that's when I started researching for them. So now we're getting into the next big chunk of the timeline, which is March through May of 2023. That's when I debated doing chapbooks. So for those who don't follow poetry, chapbooks are short collections of poems, usually range 25 to 40 pages. They don't really have a spine that's set like this. It's very curved, thin. But they can usually be sold. Some of them do sell for like $8.99, $9.99, which is what the paperback of this one's going for. But some of them are also much smaller. They're looking at $4.99 because of the small length of it. And then the ebooks normally go 99 cents. And so I debated doing that. I actually had them divided into 4 completely different sections. And I debated doing that to kind of get my toe in the water and see how it works out. And that's when it was in May that I designed the finalized cover that you see here, and I fell in love with it to the point where I scrapped the idea for chapbooks and just did the full-fledged poetry collection. My original thought was, well, it's been quite a few years since I've written poetry on a regular basis. I thought maybe, it's going to be really hard for me to, keep up the publications of poetry every year after. However, I already have 2 more poetry books. One that I plan on releasing in the beginning of 2024. I'm aiming for February. Don't have the specific date set, but that one is already 65 pages in, and I have one I would like to put out in the summer. If that's the one that goes out in the summer, then that one also has about 55, 60 pages. So, but that was when I realized how to divide the 3 sections solidly in between the 4 I had created with chapbooks. But I wanted to go ahead and just dive head first and get into self-publishing, because I am someone where I will wait 10 years to perfect this when it probably doesn't need 10 years. It just needs to be let out into the world. Alright, had to put my hair back. I'm in Texas. It's very hot. My goodness. I think the last 2 weeks it's been steadily 105 to 107 degrees. So now we're going into the next chunk, which is about mid-May to June of 2023. That's when I did my self-edits. I have quite a few books. I'll link them or list them down below. But I went ahead and did the self-edits. I'd had beta readers from the beginning, back when I wasn't anticipating even putting them all together in a collection. Just kind of looking at them here or there, providing feedback. So when I went to the self-edits, it was really just cutting out when there were, very repetitive words, finding stronger ones, or just deleting poems, almost said Pokemon, deleting poems for later collections. This originally was about 136 pages. I took 10 pages of poetry out. Just wasn't right for this collection. So I have kept them all, of course. And some of them I can see being in the poetry collection I have coming out in February. Some of them still do not quite have a place. So that's kind of what I'm doing there. But it was just about self-edits. Took me about 4 weeks to do. And I was kind of shocked, but then again I'm thinking I'm used to writing young adult. The last last manuscript I finished, I believe, was about 75 to 80,000 words. So to go from that to 9,000 words, which is what this poetry collection is essentially, went through it much quicker than I anticipated. But then we get into, so that was the writing part. It was basically from there to there. Sent it out to beta readers in June, looked it over, sent me back for any typos, anything like that. And then we dove right into it. So it was June 8th when I actually started submitting to Amazon KDP. So when I started submitting to KDP, that was really when the formatting came into play. I had divided them up what pages they were going to be which, on odd or even. But this was my first time really going into formatting. I had done some short ebooks, I'm talking like 30 pages long, that really required no formatting. So this was, I spent 3 hours formatting the initial print run, and I got my author proof copies like 2 days later on June 11th. It was so fast. But hello, baby. And so it took me those 3 hours, and of course 3 hours, and I did not realize I didn't have page numbers, because that was something that just completely slipped my mind. So June 11th came, spent the next week on and off because I'm still working full-time, and I went ahead and worked on the second version so I could actually have page numbers. I go into this in a previous video, and I'll card it somewhere up here, but there was a whole page number debacle until I realized that it's not, you have to go create sections, which I have never done before. So if you're someone who's very short on time, I highly recommend hiring a formatter, because what took me about the span of 10 hours for the print would have probably taken someone else 1 hour, if that, for how short this is overall. But I didn't spend any money on it, and the paperback looks brilliant. Went through, you can't even see that, there we go. I think it looks great. I'm very happy with how it came out. So June is also when I submitted to draft to digital. And that was, of course, I just did that for the ebook. I know they have, the paperback is now out of beta mode, but I wanted to try out Ingram Spark. I, again, talked about this before. There's good and bad to Ingram Spark. If you use Ingram Spark, have the final file ready. Do not use dummy files. You can use dummy files on any other platform if you like, but do not do it with Ingram Spark. They are just very complicated. They are not for the faint of heart. And just go ahead and wait until you're pretty much ready with it. If you have to check for like small typos, that's fine, but don't just upload something that has a few pages of it and call it a day. So I ended up uploading to Ingram Spark the end of June, beginning of July. That took about 2 to 3 weeks in and of itself. So KDP is instant, takes 5 minutes to upload. That draft to digital, I think, took 10 minutes total. Ingram Spark, from start to finish, it took me about 2 weeks to actually get everything solidified to where I could order my first author proof. And I'm glad I did, because they are not the same as KDP. So on this one you can see that that leaf here in the bottom, if I know where my camera is, that would be great. And that's going to be fuzzy, isn't it? Yep, it is. That's okay. The leaf is touching the other side of the spine. On the KDP version, it's not touching it at all. So they're a little bit thinner, but that also makes them floppier. So that's something to keep in mind, depending on how you like your books. So now we have moved into July of 2023. I've got my notes in front of me, but it's still kind of all over the place. I apologize for that. Didn't really have a set route that I was doing. I will for the next publication, because now this is kind of me testing out the waters. But July 2023 is when I have finalized and approved the Ingram Spark files, ordered that proof, and that's also when I begin doing Teaser Tuesdays on Instagram and YouTube. So when this whole thing started, I created my author brand starting back in January. I had Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and no, that was it. Tried Pinterest for like a week, got nowhere. If you're successful on Pinterest, more power to you. Couldn't figure out how to really get hits to there. YouTube started back in July, so it's only been about a month since I've been doing YouTube. But Instagram has been really great. LinkedIn I do every now and then, just because I do have a larger base there in terms of the rest of my social media. So I do go ahead and post there twice a week, once for my YouTube videos, once for my Teaser Tuesdays. But July is when I started that. July is also, it was mid-July when I finalized and approved every file across Drafted Digital, Ingram Spark, and Amazon KDP. And that's when I realized I have 2 months and I don't need to do anything for it. So in the indie world, that is either a red or a green flag. I am someone who's very easily stressed out. I'm okay waiting those 2 months. I could push it earlier, but I'm okay there. Because what I would like to do is have the second book's first draft done by the time that the ones does release. And the reason for that is I want to make sure I'm ahead of it, so that should anything happen and I fall behind, I'm still doing a minimum 2 titles a year. And that's just, again, until I get used to it. The formatting should not take me 10 hours plus, because I essentially have made myself a template. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. So now we are officially in August. I am just working on the marketing, working on writing that second book. And like I said, I'm focusing on Instagram and YouTube. YouTube, just because a video does best in terms of marketing. The reels on Instagram do far better than the static posts. That's pretty obvious to see across the board. But I also have found myself finding a lot of books recommended to me that I absolutely need to read, and they were from BookTube or BookTok that got migrated over here. So, but that was it. That was the whole timeline. So just to wrap it up, started in November 2022. By July of 2023, the writing and publishing were all set. It is set to release September 26, 2023. Oh, I just moved the camera, so sorry. But that's pretty much it. I'm hoping the timeline for the next one, I did kind of start it in June, got more serious about it in July. So that should be about July through September to write that, get everything finalized October, so I can launch a pre-order in November. And then from there, I don't want more than 6 months in between each publication. Eventually, I would like to do 3 titles a year minimum, and because I think that's a good way to maintain readership. And that is my writing and publishing timeline for this little baby. Comes out in, I did not even look at that. It's coming out September 26th. Anyway, as always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and share. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an upload. And I will see you all back here next Friday.